It's now sunny, but this morning it was absolute torrential rain, which people think London is always raining, but it very rarely rains. When it does, if you're riding a bike, you have to wear over trousers, a waterproof jacket, a hat. It was crazy this morning, but I still rode. I went to meet my PA for breakfast and I rode to King's Cross to do that in the pouring rain, and it's still a lovely thing to do because you're in the environment. Some people like to sit and avoid the rain, but actually it's quite nice to be in it, although you start laughing because it's so ridiculous, covered in spray and soaking through. So now it's sunny and now I've dried, so it's okay. But yeah, every morning I ride to work or I ride for pleasure, so today was it was no different. For me, it's become almost a personal challenge because it's so much part of who I am to ride my bike that I will always do it, and I always like to check who in my team has ridden in and who hasn't. And if they haven't, I'll usually say a word. But it's still the best way to get around in London, ever more so, but even in the rain, it's the best way. It's been a strange 2 years or 18 months during the pandemic, and our office went to sleep a little bit like most offices, and now people are starting to come back, and it's getting to where it used to be. But this is such an important space for us because we're a brand as much as a business, if not more than a business, and the creativity and the inspiration that sits at the heart of the brand really only works physically. You can do things digitally, but you have to be together, sparking off each other, seeing product, feeling product. So this is a studio, I suppose, and it's full of things that will help people to come up with new ideas and connect with the sport and connect with riding in all its different types and work together to come up with great new products and great new ideas. So that's how we like to think of it. It's a bit chaotic. It's usually very busy, although it's starting to become busy again. But it's an inspiring place. All about cycling, really. My name's Simon Mottram. I'm the founder and CEO of Rapha. Rapha's a cycling business that I started in 2004. So yes, quite a long journey now. I am a cyclist and I'm a brand person. I used to work in brand consulting, so very passionate about the role that brands can play and how brands should be built, in my view. And I started Rapha to do all that and bring it to life. And we are now amongst the biggest cycling brands in the world, and we have a business all over the world. As founder, my job is to steward the brand, make sure that we make the right decisions, which is difficult when you have so many opportunities, and it's when to say yes, when to say no, when to change and when to stay the same, how to keep us innovating and keep us growing, and also how to keep the culture behind the brand fresh. That's my job. Yeah, I'm a brand person, so I spent 15 years being a brand consultant back in the 1990s and into the 2000s, and so I spent a lot of time talking about what a brand is and what it isn't, and brand really only became apparent to the world in the 1980s, even though they've existed for 100 years. So we spend a lot of time talking about what brands are, and I think it's changing somewhat. People are calling things brands that, in my view, probably aren't. But at its simplest form, a brand is a promise delivered. That's the easiest definition I can think of what a brand is. So it's really important that you stand for something and you promise something, but it's equally important that you consistently deliver that. You deliver it through experiences, through products, through content, through whatever you do. And it takes a huge amount of rigor throughout an organization. So for me, a brand isn't something that the marketing team owns or that somebody in one department is responsible for. The best brands are responsible to the CEO, and they're the whole company. The whole company is the brand. And that's very much what Rapha is. You know, our business is a brand, and it's all about connecting our culture and our organization with customers and other riders, and them connecting with each other. And the brand just is a red thread that runs through all of that. Yeah, I think brand has become something which everyone has an opinion on and everyone has a certain amount of knowledge of, which I think is a good thing. But people are using brands very tactically, I think, and they think it's a shortcut. Whereas actually I think brands are a discipline and a long-term thing. I'm a bit old-fashioned in that sense, but I do believe that the strongest brands are things that last for 100 years. But to do that, it's not just a question of having a gimmicky name and a sharp identity and doing some creative communications. That's the easy bit. The hard bit is to sustain that over 10, 20, 50 years. And so I think a lot of the people we call brands these days are really names and identities that will come and go. But the greatest brands, they endure. The biggest brands in the world, Apple, Nike, those kind of brands, they've been around for a long time and they are brand-centric businesses. And they're the sort of brands that I'm inspired by. I think it comes down to a couple of things. I think first of all, it's really important that it's a real thing, that it actually is delivered, that you do actually do what you say. So consistency of voice, consistency of delivery is really important. You can develop and you can change, but your inner voice and the things you stand for have to stay the same, so that customers can orientate themselves around you and you don't let them down. So I think a lot of it comes down to consistency. It comes down to having a sense of purpose. So for Rapha, our sense of purpose is very clear. It's all about cycling. We think a life lived by bike is a better way of living. We want to make the sport the most popular sport in the world. That's always been the case. It will always be the case. So having a consistent sort of North Star and vision is really important. And then having really deep values that you live by are really important too. So for us, the values are what connects us to the staff, it connects us to the customer, it dictates everything we do. So I think that's the most important thing. And then if you can deliver that consistently, then that's when the magic happens and people start to go, oh, I don't quite know what that brand's about, but I keep seeing the same things in it. It keeps on doing things which I go, oh yeah, that works, that resonates. And I don't know why, but it just does. And that's when the brand's working subliminally, and that's really powerful. We don't really think about the competitors that much, which sounds arrogant, and it's not supposed to be. I don't think you succeed by looking at the competitive set and finding a niche and going after a niche. For us, that's not really what the brand should be. We have a much bigger ambition. Our ambition is for cycling itself. So what we're interested in is doing things that no one's done before. We're about bringing different kinds of products to a different audience and showing people what cycling can be, not just a different interpretation of what it is. So we tend not to look at markets cut into different segments and saying, well, we play over here. We talk about the customer and we talk about what we're trying to do, and then we'll keep an eye over our shoulder every now and again to make sure that we're not completely mad. But it's about moving forward and about being ambitious. And I think that's what has set us apart from the rest of the market for 18 years now, is that we're following our own path, we're following our own road, we're doing what we think is right, and other people respond to what we do rather than the other way around. I'd much rather be a leader than a follower. Followers, you're playing by somebody else's game, whereas we're playing by our own game here. I think anybody in the company would tell you, and most customers who know me would probably say the same, that it's sort of indivisible. Everything about me is in this business somewhere, and the whole of this business is completely inside me. First and foremost, I'm a passionate cyclist. It's what I think about when I wake up. It's the thing that drives me on. It's one of the great loves of my life, and the same is true for the brand. And the values behind the brand, loving the sport, suffering, being innovative, thinking for yourself and inspiring people, that's kind of what drives me on as well. So it's very hard to separate myself from the brand. There are lots. I took lots of advice, still do take lots of advice. A few things spring to mind. One thing that a good friend of mine said right at the beginning, when I said we're going to go direct to consumer. No one was selling clothes online to men at the time, but it felt like the right thing to do. We'll start with a website. And she said to me, that's great, and that's where the market's going, but you can't build a brand that you want to build just online. You have to be physical. And that's been really powerful for us. So from day one, we did events and activities. We then have clubhouses, we have a community, a club. The physical connection between the brand and the customer is so, so important. And that's something I've held true for a long, long time. What else has somebody advised me? Another thing which has been consistent through the whole Rapha journey has been to think about customers all over the world, not just customers you see in your own market. So I'm in London. There's a big market in London for cycling. We do quite well in that market, but from literally day one, we were targeting people in America. We started to build business in Asia. We've spread to over 100 countries very quickly, and we have a bridgehead in all those countries. And the brand can talk to somebody in Seoul or somebody in Jakarta or somebody in Melbourne really, really powerfully in the same way as it connects to somebody in London. We all share this same passion. So to have that ambition to be global was something that I was advised very early on, which has been huge for us. The UK is only 22-23% of our sales, so we're pretty much an international brand. How do I define myself? It shouldn't really be about me now. I think it's good to have somebody who is the connection right to the past. And I think founder-led businesses can be very effective because there's a certain discipline a founder brings about being focused on the customer and being a bit relentless and very ambitious, which you want the company to feel that. So my job is to make sure that other people in the company remember to put the customer first. They remember to be brave and to try new things. They remember to be totally authentic about the passion. And I do that through other people now. It's not so much about me. I can nurture the rest of the organisation to do that. So I can go and ride my bike. Yeah, we've been very fortunate. Unlike some companies during the pandemic, cycling has done incredibly well, and we're twice as big as we were 2 years ago, and are growing incredibly quickly with lots of new customers. So it's been a fantastic step forward for us, and for cycling globally. It's us and cycling, we are two of the same thing. So we are now even more ambitious about the future. We'll move office next year to an office that's twice the size up the road. Still in North London, and it'll allow us to really set out the organisation, the culture in a way that fits who Rapha is going to be rather than who Rapha was 10 years ago. I think definitely. It's definitely a magazine because it's definitely a brand, because it takes a similar approach, I think, to each brand, which is not to say it's the same approach, but it brings the same sort of creative angle to brands. In that every time I see a brand profiled, including Rapha, when Rapha was profiled, I saw things about the brand that I didn't see before. And it would be very easy just to do a compendium of all the things that are known to be important about a company or a brand. But B Magazine always seems to come at it differently. As I was saying to you before, I think that's really powerful because I read the Rapha one, it's like, I didn't expect them to look at it that way. Oh, that's really interesting. That's really powerful. And I seem to get that every time from B Magazine. So yeah, I think you're a brand. Just need to keep going. Kind of what I said. I think it's... I love magazines and I love brands. So of course I'm going to like B Magazine. I like things that are carefully art directed, that have a point of view, that surprise, and that are produced with amazing quality and attention to detail. And I think that's what B Magazine does. Very similar to what we try and do at Rapha, actually. All those details matter. I think it would be very easy just to keep doing nicely formed product brands. I think, and you've done brands that aren't product brands. So it's not that that's all you've done, but there's a sort of, I put them all on my bookshelf, and there's a sort of common identity to those kind of brands. I think what I expect B Magazine to do is to keep pushing what a brand is and the sort of subject matter, so that you can be embracing the new kinds of brands and the new kinds of organisations, not just well-curated product brands like Rapha.